This is the space station calling the Dane and the Pain. We want our anti-gravity pen back. On this episode, we look at the future of car navigation with holographic projection. We discuss the delivery of information in today's society before we look into how teams, companies, and individuals are collaborating in a modern workplace using tools like Slack and Teams. The Dane and the Pain, making crocheting cool since 1993.
Welcome back to another episode of The Dane The Pain, the show where we can see Russia from our houses and Joel has his own army of Oompa Loompas. How are you doing, Joel?
Just good. Speaking of Russia, this is Alaska, and this is Iditarod time in Alaska. A lot of people online ask me about the Iditarod.
What?
The Iditarod, which is a sled dog race, and it starts about 1,000 miles from where I live, because I'm in the most southerly part of Alaska, and goes all the way out to Nome. It's the last, it's called the last great race, and I think.
What, do you collect gnomes, or is it? What?
No. So they actually use sleds with dogs, and unlike your Jeep,
I was on one of those once.
These things actually go in the snow. They have snow.
No. When I lived in Alberta, I was on a dog sled
right.
thing in snow and everything. Yes.
Oh, Alberta, you have been in the in worse weather than Alaska. No, I always think it's funny because people will ask me about the Iditarod, and it is like literally the closest part to Ketchikan is 800 miles away. But the cool thing is
you went there on the weekend.
Yeah, I just got on the plane and went. We have a neighbor here in Ketchikan. She's a teacher, and I've shared some recordings of her dogs because it's funny. She's run the Iditarod twice, and with her team, and now the sled dogs live about 200 yards from our house, up through the trees, and when there's a fire, generally it, or an ambulance anywhere, because the dogs will howl. And then, of course, in the winter, if they hear wolves, they will howl. And I don't have to go too far off on a tangent, but the interesting thing about sled dogs, and you would know it immediately, because when they get out, they don't care about other people. So they will literally run through our property and run past me and our kids or whatever, our cat, and they won't even look at him. Right, it's like they're on a mission, and they're not sort of trained to be these friendly, lovey dogs. Now they respond to their owner, but and they're not aggressive. They just don't really care about you. That's all. Which is, I don't know what you'd call that, but
yeah, I know they don't know the magic of the stray pat. I think is the key to this. They just know work because they're a working animal.
Yeah, and they're very lean, and she takes really good care of them, and it's fun to see them. Sometimes she'll take them out on trails out of town and have them pull her on a four-wheeler, and I've been out running several times where they've gone past me like I don't exist. I wish every dog was like them, actually.
And very, very fast.
And they are very fast, yes. So what's going on?
I remember.
What's going on with you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I remember the only thing I remember from this dog sled trip was more than 20 years ago, was that he put them on the front of the car, this big American pickup truck, before he attached them to the sled. And if he hadn't had the brakes and the park and everything on, they would just pull the car, clean off, just be gone. It was very impressive. So, I had this interesting... I've done it a couple of times before, but it just kind of dawned on me today that, I have this pool that I maintain, and it's sometimes the bane of my existence. But today, I poured 4 liters of acid, so a gallon of acid into this pool, and it's not like acid, it's proper acid. It's like, don't get it on your skin because it'll burn. Make sure you don't inhale it, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and you just pour it in the pool where people swim. It's fantastic.
So you didn't pull the batteries out of
if
your
people knew-
cars and go dump your battery acid
Yeah,
in there.
yeah.
Not that kind of thing.
Oh, you got to sift it first to get get the lumps out. But other than that, yeah, same thing. It's dawned on me, And then the other thing that I thought was interesting, or not interesting, is that if you're not from Australia, we have something called eucalyptus trees, which are native to this country. They also exist in California, but they are a large range of them are native to Australia. And these trees, most of them anyway, thrive on bushfire. So they like fire because that's the way that everything else burns. They survive. They get more light. Some of them, that's the way that their seeds germinate, blah, blah, all this sort of stuff. So that means that they want lots of fuel on the ground, which means that they just lose limbs. Just not even dead limbs. Limbs just fall off randomly, right? And last night I was sitting here in the office and I heard this thump, this huge crash. And I went, uh-oh. That did not sound good. I wondered what it fell on and what it was. And of course, it was pitch black outside. It was windy. I go out trying to, wandering around, couldn't find it. Eventually, after about 15 minutes, so we got a bit of land here, obviously. So after 15 minutes, I found it, and essentially a whole tree, the size of a whole tree, it was about a third of an actual tree, but the size of a whole tree had just fallen off, just given up. Yeah, it was not dead or anything. It just gave up, parted ways with the rest of the tree, and it fell beautifully in between our bed and breakfast, a fence, and a hay shed.
Oh, very nice. How very polite.
I know it was very polite, and I just posted a picture on Twitter.
I'll have to look for that.
It's huge. It's a massive tree. Anyway, that was my very exciting evening.
Oh, I love cutting trees and chainsaws. That's something I'm actually
when are you coming to visit?
Oh, I'd love to come and trim all your trees for you. I am not a big fan of climbing trees, but
no, they fall down themselves. You don't have to climb anything.
We actually have a neighbor who's got a tree that it's an old tree, and they like it so much, and it had rotten at various points. And what they did is they took a chain and they chained it around the tree to hold it together. And that's actually a tactic that some tree fallers will use because quite often trees are rotten on the middle.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll chain the tree like that to keep it from splitting when they're cutting it down.
Absolutely.
I've never had to do that, but anyway. So, well, that's cool.
So I know what I'm doing on Sunday.
Yeah. You don't need any firewood, huh?
Well, we do. We do go through a fair amount of firewood. Also, because we run the B&B, so if you're at home, you're kind of like, oh, I'll just turn on the heater. I can't be bothered. If you go to B&B, you go, I'm going to burn every single last piece of firewood that there is.
Yes.
Yep. That's just what people do. So we do go through a fair bit.
So when you burn that stuff, does it smell good? Is it like the smell like eucalyptus?
Some of them smell more than others, but generally it's pretty good.
Oh, interesting.
It's like any other. Yeah, it's like any other tree. Some of it burns really, really fast, and some of it will last all night. It's just different kinds of wood.
Huh.
They're just all the same family.
What should we talk about today?
So I found this really interesting article because I do venture a bit in the space of holograms and holographic interfaces and that sort of stuff. And I came across a company in Switzerland which is called Wayray. So Wayray, Wayray. And they're doing holographic AR navigation. So it's an AR device, and you put that in front of your vision in the car. So I'm assuming it sits on the dashboard or something. And it'll overlay your real world with holograms, an AR implementation of navigation, which I thought was really cool. It is such a cool.
So this goes concept. On like like your dash of your car, where you actually wear it.
I'm not 100% sure. It's not that obvious, but it's the flagship product is something called the Navion. It's a dash cam unit, so I'm assuming it sits on top of the dash and it films out the front and it shows you a screen on the back, right? It's reasonably small, 7-ish by 4 by 3 inches, so it's not huge, which is good. and you control it via an app or motion gestures or voice. So there's a few different ways of interfacing with it. And then you can use it like a navigation unit. So you set routes, and it shows you speed limits and distance to things and which way to go and all this stuff that modern navigation does. But you see it on the real world, which is what I think is very cool.
Okay, so yeah, I'm looking at this because so for the people that use or have played, say, Forza Horizon, if you
Mm-hmm.
can imagine on Forza Horizon, it will lay out like the best path in green and then red. So that it looks, when I'm looking at it, it looks like it lays out a path in green with those sort of arrows that are larger when they're closer to you and then get smaller as they go away. And then below that, it
Mm-hmm.
has an
Mm-hmm.
indicator where the churn is. It looks kind of cool. So does this augment your phone and voice, or is this meant to replace
Well,
that? Does it work off your phone?
there is a phone app for it, which you can use to hook into entertainment and stuff like that. It's not a smartphone app as such. It is its own device. It is a standalone device. But it's let me just have a look here. It's you can connect it to the OCD connector on your phone to get car information out of it, so entertainment information and other stats that it would use. But it uses augmented reality to display on your real world. So you look through a device and see the real world that way. It has this wide angle field of view, which is very neat. And I don't think it's a product yet, which is why this kind of came up on my radar. It's an AI device and it's in development, but they've got a bunch of Chinese money
Well, one of
to
the things
to
that's
to
interesting
run it.
about this is, and I've kind of wondered about this quite a bit, because so you get in a car, you've got a phone, you maybe look up a destination in advance, and I've only ever used these tools when I'm out of where I live, obviously on an island, say in Seattle, Portland, or wherever we've gone, and
Yeah.
so uh, there is an element of using a phone that is distracting, and there's also, I think, in some cases you can make the argument that having somebody talking at you can be distracting as well if you also have a heads up display. So I guess I'm just openly wondering about how safe and how well thought out this is, because it's a heads up display on your in front of you that presumably is
Mm-hmm.
giving you the correct directions. But my experience has been in taking directions in cars is that what I know sort of you have a sort of a gut sense, and you have a way of driving. I don't drive up to a stop sign and hit the brakes, right? I slow down in advance. um, I tend to be pretty cautious unless I've got a manual transmission, and
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
sometimes wonder if these sorts of things with distractions make it either less safe. I don't know. Um, it just seems like instead of having one thing going on, now you have two things going on. So somebody giving you directions verbally versus
Well, I don't think it's meant.
verbally and also having a
Yeah.
map in front of you. I think I'd probably just want one or the other.
Well, it's. I don't think it's a distraction, to be honest, because it's just. I just found an image here. I was scrolling through their site. The device itself, so the Navion, is as I said, a smallish device, and it projects from the middle up on your windscreen essentially. So you just look at the world like you would any other time, except you have navigation on top of the world. Now, there's other things that they've baked into it as well, which is there's a picture of a WhatsApp message, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not a good idea. But be that as it may, the core function of it is this GPS heads-up display, I guess, which I think is a good idea. Why would you not have more overlay on what you're seeing already in a car instead of having to look down or look across on navigation? I'm sure there's voice in it as well, and it's voice activated. So, but
Yeah,
it seems like a good idea if they can kind of
I
manage
guess
all
I'm
the other
kind of old
expectations.
school, and I'm probably not the person this product is aimed at because, well, even today, well, no, I mean,
No, no, you're just
I
old.
typically don't have, I mean, I have the Volkswagen, we have Bluetooth in the Volkswagen, and it's hooked up to all the phones, and so it kind of shocked me today when I got it and it drove home, and I got a call. The phone rang, and I instantly went to check the phone, which I shouldn't be doing when I'm driving, and then all of a sudden somebody was talking to me. But I have to tell you, since I don't normally do that, that was fairly
Oh,
distracting. Um, but anyways, I digress. I was just sort of
mm.
openly wondering about, what when they price this, so many cars are coming with a lot of these features already. It almost seems like this is, a step or two behind. Unless they're going to sell this in mass to auto manufacturers. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I usually am.
Well, I think this is many systems are like a lot of systems come up ground like this. They build this essentially a prototype, right? That works and show a concept, and then big, generally Japanese or German or American producers buy this hardware or these patents to bake it into their own cars, right? So this would be, say, on a high-end Merc, it would make sense to have this built into
Yeah,
the car.
it wouldn't make sense to me though. But then again, we have 34 miles of road, so if I get lost, it's my own darn fault. you, you know?
That's that's hilarious. It reminds me of that picture of the island where there's a car out that says 10-year-old car only done, what is it, 12 kilometers or something, and there's 100 meters of road.
Yeah, really, we have logging roads in other, if you want to go off, you can drive further than that, but really from end to end of the island, it's a 2-lane road and that's it. There's never a
But you
need
could
to
drive
rush.
off the island. Could you drive to Seattle?
No,
Oh, you can't.
no,
Okay.
you would drive, get on a ferry, and it's about a 6-hour ride to um, Prince Rupert, British Columbia, or you could take the ferry to
Hmm.
Bellingham, Washington, which is
There's a
almost two
ferry that goes
days.
2 days.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's impressive.
yeah. The kids in schools here actually take the ferries back and forth to games and what have you, to competitions and
Ah.
all that kind of stuff. Matter of fact,
So it's safe to say that you don't use navigation much.
no, I don't. I was going to tell you, I was going to post it actually. If anybody's interested, the state of Alaska is selling almost a 300-foot ferry, the Taku, right now. The minimum deposit is 5,000, and they're looking to get, I think, 1.4 million for it. It's a beautiful ferry, blue and
That
gold.
would go well with a Swiss company.
Absolutely. Anyways,
Yeah.
I dig.
Maybe the Swiss Navy would buy it.
Yeah. Actually, the last ferry I think they sold from here went to the Philippines. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Well,
You're right.
that's a cool one to check
Okay.
out and keep an eye on. And you said they were Swiss, but with
It's a Swiss
Chinese
company, yeah.
backers.
Well, they got Chinese Series B funding now, so
Oh, I see.
so
Okay,
they
so
seem like they're going full bore. It probably is going to be a product.
yeah,
Although on the website, if you go to the How It Works tab,
yeah.
it goes to URL hash WTF. So anyway, I'm not sure what that means. I just noticed that. So they might want to fix that one.
That should
So
be our site.
I know exactly. So,
What
dear
exactly does
listeners,
that
if you
stand
don't want to
for?
miss any of this rambling that we are currently in the midst of, please go onto a website, daneandthepain.com, and register to be a delinquent. And we'll send you emails about new episodes, and hopefully in the future we'll share some new stuff and free stuff and stuff like that. Anyway, that was my plug.
Right on. I'll get one in later. I promise. What else are we going to talk about?
So that was just an interesting article that I found. I'll obviously share it in the show notes as we always do. But I wanted to kind of the last two topics of the day go a little bit hand in hand. I wanted to talk about mentoring, and it's one of the things that I do professionally. I do mentor other people, primarily tech people, because that's what I know, and that's where I have experience in, and I do actually think I'm pretty good at it. So I had this idea Actually, I was having a conversation with our previous guest, Troy Hunt, about this, and he was like saying, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you do a year's worth of tips on YouTube?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "What?" So what he meant was, do like a tech tip of the day, or a mentor tip of the day, or a freelance tip of the day, whatever you want to call it. I haven't really formalized it yet, and just publish stuff every day. And I was just going to pick your brain on saying, "Hey, would you actually go and watch something, say a minute video a day, or a 2 minute video or something?" I just don't know, and I thought it'd be interesting conversation around how do we consume, information based on this idea that I had.
Yeah, that's a tough sell because you really have to get it in front of folks. And I think, like LinkedIn would be a great example of a place where that would you'd have a sort of a ready spoon-fed sort of consumer. Um, I think there's a large amount of that sort of stuff out there. What there isn't, at least that I've seen, is something specifically for developers, right? So,
That's true.
and I mean, I know that big companies have tried to create these career paths, but so it's weird. I mean, I know a lot of the guys that I know growing up who ended up at Microsoft and working in creative design, engineering and design, and they none of them went to school with that as what they were going to do. And so I guess what I'm saying is
Mm,
that
mm.
there seems to be it seems to me like there would be a need for someone who there might be a need for people coming out of college or in college to find out what's the next step, what are the skills that they need to have or they will need to have to be able to get their foot in the door somewhere. Aside from the soft skills, which is one of the things you've talked about, which is, getting along with people, speaking with people, communicating, listening, all those things.
Yeah.
So that's probably a mouthful, but I think, I don't know. It just depends if,
Well, I'm not sure either. It's it's just because what is the right medium, right? And it's often when you want to find something on the internet, whatever it is you're looking for, if you get a 1 hour video, it's unlikely you're going to go and watch it, right? It's just too long. The culture we have today, the society dictates that now that's too long to spend on a single thing. Sometimes people do, of course, but the whole tidbits of information, I think, is what people want. It's why we like the what we talked about last time, or a couple of episodes ago, is if you have a title with a number in it, people go, "Oh, I can relate to that. I know when I'm at the end." So having a video that's a minute or two seems to me like a reasonable way of delivering content or value. It's I don't know if is it going to be too fragmented. I'm not sure.
well, I think, you could make the counter argument that if that's what everybody else is doing, is that as a trend, that then that is already going to be a met need, and that um, I think probably a better way of maybe doing it would be recording an hour or whatever, 2 hours, that is also a presentation or whatever content you want, but that can be broken up by you, so you're not having to duplicate services or your work, and can be used in multiple settings. But I'm it struggle for me. I mean, because the other thing is that, I mean, you're in a position where you're at physically, and I think where you could appeal to a much broader audience than, say, I could as just an English speaker. You have a set of skills, and because of your relationship with Europe and people there, professional relationship, I think you could focus in more than one area. But
Yeah,
that's again,
possibly. I mean, I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest. I was more trying to think of how can I connect with more people so that I'm not completely just talking out my ass. Um, so that was But anyway, that was just I just wanted to pick your brain on it. I thought it might have been, a topic that people were actually having an opinion on because we are bombarded with so much stuff all the time. I can't remember the stats, but it's something like the average 6-year-old is exposed to 600 ads a day or something. It's just crazy, unbelievable amount of subversive ads.
Well, I think figuring out who you want. See, and that's the other thing is that figuring out who you want to target. And I do think, and obviously I'm subjective. I think that your appeal is beyond just tech because at least from my perspective on tape and everything I've watched at the different conferences you've done, you come across as you are, which is a pretty nice and caring person who cares about what they're talking about. And so your appeal, your appeal may be beyond that tech audience. No.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You can just remember.
No,
remember my PayPal account. That's all. So I mean, there's that argument too. But I think what you do is you test it and test it on some social media you already have. I mean, you can record a 30-second tidbit or 20-second tidbit, and you could post it on Twitter every day, and just see what happens.
Yeah, true. And you'll see the number of followers decline as they find out that I actually talk.
Yeah. His lips are moving, but I don't understand what he's saying. Or they'll see your face and go, oh, God. No, that's not true. That wasn't very nice.
Well, truth always hurts. Anyway, that was just a bit of a middle segment here. You had a great idea because you were, I don't know how you came across this, Joel, but you were talking about Microsoft Teams. And I thought we could at least kind of explore the different collaboration tools that exist. And I use Slack a ton for various reasons. I have not used Teams professionally yet. And then there's others. What about Yammer as an internal tool as well? But yeah, where were you? Why did you come across this?
Well, so I mean, I think I hate to talk about other people's experiences, my own, because I know the world is much bigger than me. But it occurred to me after they had the announcement the other day or whatever it was about Slack being available, or not Slack, but Teams being available, that I had not heard really any sort of buzz outside of the expected channels. And internally, where I work in the larger community, care community I work in, I had not heard it as well, which kind of surprised me. And then I started thinking again about, okay, well, we have Slack, Microsoft is coming up with Teams. These are all sort of, aimed at businesses. And what occurs to me is it's just these are efforts by businesses to I assume meet customers' needs, and what I don't ever see is really an improved communications, with whatever the most recent iteration or version or replacement for email that comes along. You still continue to have the same communication issues. They just are different. And I've used Slack before. I used it as part of an insider program, as part of a group communicating about beta testing or whatever we were doing. And Slack worked well, but it didn't work any better than Skype for what I was doing. I mean, there were it didn't seem any more logical to me. Now, granted, I wasn't using it for project management, and I didn't have a team of 20 people that I was managing. So I guess I'm just wondering, sort of out loud again, what's going to happen with these sort of communication devices or communication tools, because I'm not so sure that they improve communication.
Well, I'll tell you why I started using Slack initially. So I'm part of a group that organizes DDD Melbourne, which is a community conference once a year, about 400, 500 people.
Did you say D&D?
And we had
Dungeons
DDD,
and Dragons?
So
oh.
Yeah, I wish. Developer.
Nerds.
There's a few of them. Yeah, it originated in the UK, and a good friend Alex Mackey, that hopefully we'll get on the show, he took it with him to Melbourne when he moved here, and it's now in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth as well. So it's kind of grown in Australia. And we had so many emails a few years ago, probably about 4 years ago, that people were missing out on stuff, and someone didn't get that email, and someone didn't see that email reply, and emails were containing, suddenly the topic of the email didn't match the subject, and there was just all these problems with emails and managing this team of volunteers that communicate whenever we have time, essentially. So we made a conscious decision. So it was kind of like everybody agreed, we will never ever use email again unless we communicate with outside resources, so sponsors, catering, whatever it is. For everything else, internally, we would use Slack. So we have a number of channels. We have one for sponsors. We have one for catering. We have whatever it is that people have as their field that they're responsible for. We have a channel, and if you are interested and want to contribute to that channel, you can join it, and that's where the conversation is. And we found that immensely helpful, because not only can you choose the information that you want, you aren't just put on something and add it to some email chain, but you also have a history. So if you join a team that is, if we have new people coming in, because we're all volunteers, people come and go, you can go and see what the history of this particular topic has been. So there's just a whole bunch of stuff that is really, really useful for us for Slack. Now, the main reason that we aren't using Teams is that Teams is currently only for organizations internally. In other words, you have to have an email address with @somecompany.com. You can't have an external email address to be part of a team. And that's a problem, because we're all, volunteers. We all have personal email addresses. So that's probably the main reason we're using it right now, but also because just history. We've used Slack all along.
So now, one of the things I was wondering
go
about those is, we talked to Troy Hunt about this a little bit, and not about this, but about messaging and what is encrypted and secure and what isn't. If you don't know, it's okay. But are any of these encrypted?
I'm not actually sure. Let me just find that graph that you are referring to. Yeah, that was really based around instant messaging, not so much these sort of collaboration
Yeah,
tools.
well, I mean,
So I'm not sure. I would have thought that
if they were in a proprietary system, I would think with Teams there would be some, additional. But I'm just thinking of Slack. You're organizing a conference. I don't know if it's proprietary or not, or some of the communication is or not. But if it's not encrypted, it seems like a lot of information that could be, available with also.
I'm 90% sure it is
Okay.
encrypted.
I was
not 100%, but yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if, when you join a group of, several hundred people that come from different parts of the country for one time, it's not sort of the same as you go to work and there's a series of protocols that, as far as security goes. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we use it for Pluralsight authors as well. So there's 1,000 authors, I guess, somewhere around that. And we all use Slack as well for, so that's communication to authors around all sorts of stuff. You might be editing tips and tricks. It might be events that are looking for speakers. It might be something, they want help with testing a product. It might be around designing your slides. Whatever it is, there are channels on the Pluralsight Slack team that allows us to essentially collaborate between us as well. So it is a invaluable tool for me now, and especially as a freelancer, I get put on projects with all sorts of companies, and I rarely have an email address with that company because that would just create more noise. So I just get added to their Slack team. When the project is over, I get removed from that Slack team, and it's easy.
I didn't intend to make this a topic to do a Q&A with you, but I had another question about that since you're the expert.
Sure.
So, so today a good portion of the work that I did was going through historical information included in emails and building reports and information going back to 2011. and I was able to
Mm-hmm.
look through archive emails and pull information, including attachments, out of those archived emails. And is that something? Is that possible with Slack?
It is. Yep, it is. So there's a base version of Slack which is good for most smaller teams. It's free. You can set up as many channels as you want and users and whatnot. The way that they make money is that if you have more than X number of messages, it'll only keep say the latest 10,000 messages. I can't remember the
Yeah,
levels. And if you want to have access to more, then you start having to pay the company behind Slack, which I don't even know what it's called. It's called Slack maybe.
yeah,
And
it
that's
is.
the business model.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's their business model, right? That's how they get people in the door, is that they have the free tier, which is good for many, many people. And as your business grow, they go, all right, well, now you're making money. You can afford to throw some money our way as well, which is a nice way of doing it if you can start up that way. So yeah, absolutely. And you can search. The search is very good. You can now have video calls on Slack. You can have audio calls. It's all stored. It's all saved. Everything, attachments, all sorts.
it's perfect then.
They've got a ton of integration points as well, which is, I mean, Microsoft Teams has that as
Yeah.
well. Sorry, what was that?
So the last time that I did any research on Slack, this is in May of 16, they had two almost 3 million active users,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure that and of those, about 900,000 or 930,000 were what you just described, paying customers.
Oh wow, that's pretty good.
So to put that in, but to put it in perspective, as not that Minecraft is Slack, but Minecraft has, I think, 53 million or 55 million daily users, and
Mm-hmm.
120 million that have paid. I don't know. I like doing wacky things like that. So
Yeah.
they haven't made money. Um, I'm kind of curious to see how Teams, because I don't think Teams is even designed to. Somebody was talking about how Teams is gonna kill Slack, and I'm like, I don't think Teams is even designed to compete with Slack.
No, and it was funny when it came out, when Teams was announced, Slack made this big
Yeah,
post on, and all that. And there was a big hoo-ha about it because they could have just shut up and they would have been fine. But no, they had to go, and essentially they admitted that they saw Teams as a threat and they were afraid of it by saying we're not afraid of it,
yeah.
which was kind of interesting, the psychology of it. But no, there's. I'm just looking at the numbers here. On the 7th of February, there was 1.5 million paid Slack users or Slack
So
accounts,
they've grown.
which is pretty
They've
good.
grown. What that would be
Hmm.
about a half a million since the April or whatever
Like in a
16.
year
Yeah,
ish.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the growing,
Which is
that's a lot.
that is a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot, exactly. And I think it's Slack is a good product. It even works on Windows Phone. Hooray!
Yeah, I know.
And
That's how I used it.
the only thing that I have a bit it's the Windows app, so the desktop app for Windows that I use all the time is made with Electron, I think it's called, which is this wrapper of websites. So it's basically a web interface that's been wrapped in this Win32 executable, which means you can run it on desktop. And it uses an enormous amount of memory and resources. And it just keeps going and going and going. Like right now, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, hang on. I think it's cheating me. It's not as bad as Chrome by any stretch of the imagination. Chrome is just crazy, absolutely crazy.
Well, I'm actually
So
kind of
yeah.
surprised. So one of the ways that it potentially, Microsoft going with Teams could hurt them is LinkedIn, which has a user base of well, the active users is much lower, but I think there's 400 million or so right around there with LinkedIn accounts.
Mm.
And now they don't have that many employees. Their LinkedIn employees use Slack, or they did use Slack. And I
Right.
haven't asked anybody, I
Yeah.
haven't been brave enough to ask anybody yet if Teams is going to be implemented at LinkedIn. My guess is they probably would leave it be because of the number is probably relatively small, and then make that translate or transition at some other point in the future. But I don't know. Now I'm way off in the weeds.
Yeah,
Are
I
there
think
any
there's
other
room for both.
are there
Yeah.
any other solutions out there though that you can think of that would compete with either of those two?
Well, I don't know about competing, but there is Yammer, which is also a Microsoft product that they bought. And I've never had any good experiences with Yammer. I've been part of some Microsoft conversations internally that have forced you to go on Yammer. Um, and that was painful. Right now,
Yeah.
a lot of the MVP announcements are done on Yammer, and for some reason, I get emails about Yammer announcements, so I can read them in the email. But if I try and log in, it just categorically insists on logging into my lastclint.com team, which is not a thing. It just brings it up and says, "Here's your team," and there's one person on it. I'm like, no, that address is meant anyway. So I have not had good experiences with Yammer. I'm hoping I'm the only one, but I don't think I am.
Yeah, I think when I've been following Slack since about March of 14, and it's been interesting to watch them grow. I'm kind of like you though with I think Yammer. We have the icons at where I work, and I think it keeps track of the number of days that people have left the organization that haven't been removed from the system. But
I like to say I have the icon, as in
yeah.
other words, I never ever use it.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't want to be negative, Nelly, but what would someone who works in a Google environment use for this sort of communication? Would they just be stuck on email,
No,
or
there's
they would use a Slack?
I don't know. Google Hangouts used to use it. I think they probably use Slack. I don't actually know. I'm not sure.
Huh? That's an interesting.
Um,
I mean, I'm surprised that Google hasn't rushed in with a similar product, or they haven't bought Slack.
well, it's a funny thing. Do you remember Google Wave?
I do not. But I mean, at one
No.
point in time, I shared a list of 30 Google products or 40 Google products that had come and gone. I mean, they're just like the rest of the big tech companies. They try stuff out,
Mm.
they throw it against the wall, and sometimes it sticks, and sometimes it usually
Well,
doesn't.
Google Wave was impressive. It was a brilliant
Really,
product, but people weren't ready for it. It was way too complex, I think. But it did everything:
really,
audio, bot integration, coding, all sorts, video, everything. One other product that I do want to mention because it's an Australian product that I forgot about, but I used to use this when I worked for a consultancy, is HipChat.
hip
It's
chat.
made by Atlassian. Yeah, HipChat. So Atlassian also makes Jira and Confluence,
Now, I've heard of
and
Confluence.
yeah, so they're Atlassian products. And Jira is a ticketing system, so you can keep track of support tasks or bugs or whatever it is you want to create tickets for. And I used it all the time, and it's very, very good. In fact, the one of the co-founders of Atlassian is now the 10th wealthiest guy in Australia or something like that, and he's my age, and he was in this very, very prominent interview on TV, and he was wearing a geek T-shirt. I thought it was fantastic. Um,
So is hip chat? Is primarily a Australian venture, or is it outside Australia?
no, it's global. Yeah, absolutely. Atlassian products are used all over the world. SourceTree is another one. If you're a developer, you might know of SourceTree, which is a GitHub integration tool.
Ah,
But HipChat is pretty good.
yeah, I'd never heard of them before. We should include that in the show notes because I think choice is a good thing,
Yep.
and this might be.
Yeah, for sure.
I see that it looks like they support Mac, Windows, iOS, Android. They support Linux.
They support
God,
everything with their products,
I need a
which is
glass
nice.
of water. It says it does. It says it runs on
And
everything. That's awesome. Oh, I might have to just check
it
that
is
out.
awesome.
Is there?
And,
Do you
and
know?
it's
Do you know anybody that's actually using it?
only the internally in companies. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But you can just sign up and create an account, and you can look for teams. I think I'm not sure. But yeah, I really want to, shout out to Atlassian because they've been the best place to work award has been given to them. I don't know, the last 3 years or something in the best place to work in
Really?
Australia. They are really quite an amazing company.
You know what?
Yeah.
All the
yeah,
people that
absolutely.
work at Atlassian, did I say that right? Should go to our website.
Atlassian. So Atlas,
Ah,
Cian.
Atlassian. should go to our website, the
Atlassian.
DaneandThePain.com, and there's a link at the top called Supporting the Show. And if you go ahead and support the show, Lars will not have to pour the acid into his pool on his own. And it's also likely that we might keep him from telling the joke at the end of the show. So if you have a chance, go to our website, have a look at it. Even if you don't make it, maybe sign up for our newsletter. Check us out on Twitter. Have a listen to one of our episodes.
Exactly. Yeah. I like
all
it.
those things.
And that actually brings us to the joke of the week.
It's the joke of the week, so come along with me. I cannot promise it will be funny, but it's the joke of the week.
You ready for it?
Yeah.
So, a cop pulls Heisenberg, so Heisenberg the physicist, a cop pulls Heisenberg over and asks him, "Do you know how fast you were going?" Heisenberg replies, "No, but I know where I am." So that's funny if you know about Heisenberg. Go look up Heisenberg.
God.
It's funny.
You're horrible. Why do you always bring me these like sort of esoteric, like science jokes?
Yeah, they're good.
No, they are good.
His
or
name
most
is
of them are
Werner
good.
Karl Heisenberg, and he was the German theoretical physicist.
You should do a whole show with that accent.
Yeah.
If you do a
Hello,
whole
I am
show,
Klaus.
That's right, Klaus. And I will do a show as a pirate. Arr.
Grr. That's a deal.
Well, hey,
I shall talk about the BMW and the Mercedes the whole show.
Yeah, we have some pretty cool guests coming up on future episodes, so keep an eye out for that. And we'll have I would say Lars will have links up to all of our mentioned companies along with the podcast on the website, and I will not have anything to do with any of that.
Thank God.
Yes.
All right, till next time. See you, Joe.
Good night, Lars.
Thank you for listening in on another episode of The Dane and the Pain. We record across the Pacific, across hemispheres, and across time zones. You can find us on www.daneandthepain.com. Our Twitter handle is Dane_Pain, and we are The Dane and the Pain on YouTube and Facebook. We're also on your favorite podcast app, including iTunes, and please join our fan club by clicking the Register Now button on our website to know about upcoming shows and any free stuff we may have to share. See you next time on The Dane and the Pain.